Welcome to the Longwood Public Library. My name's Allison, and today we're going to be talking about BookBrowse, a resource for book club selections and reading recommendations. Let's get started. To get to BookBrowse, you're going to start off by going to our website, www.longwoodlibrary.org. Then click Research. This will bring you to the list of all of our online databases. There's two different ways to get to BookBrowse through here. First, you can scroll through the list alphabetically until you see BookBrowse, or you could go up to the top, limit by subject, books and reading. Scroll down to Apply, and BookBrowse will be the first option. To open BookBrowse, simply click on the picture, and that'll bring you straight to the BookBrowse homepage. So there are a lot of different links and a lot of different things you can do right from this homepage. So let's break it down. First, there's this handy area right in the middle here called This Week's Top Picks. I like this area because it gives you a selection of books every week, and for each book they give you a review as well as a nonfiction article. These are called Beyond the Book articles, and we're going to talk about them in a little more depth later. But just know for now that if you really don't know what to read, BookBrowse already has a list of books available for you right on the front page. But there's also a lot of other stuff that you can check out here. So let's take a look at this sidebar right on the homepage. And you'll notice that the sidebar that's here is very similar to the bar that is up here as well. BookBrowse has a lot of different ways to get to the same pages. So for now, we're going to focus on this one, but just know that you can also find these links up at the top bar. So we're going to start off with what's new. And this area is pretty cool. So there are a lot of books published every week, and it can be very hard to keep up with what's coming out and what's getting a lot of buzz and what should be on your radar in the future. And this What's New area in BookBrowse makes it really easy to just see what has recently come out, what's coming out in the future, and what's getting a lot of publicity. So let's take a look at some of the titles that they are recommending here. First, we have the First Impressions area, and these are titles that are recommended by the users of BookBrowse. BookBrowse does have a very active community that reviews books and participates in the book discussions, and these are books that they are recommending. Scrolling down a little more, we have books that are publishing this week. So as you can see, we have 3 titles that are listed here, but I can also click this arrow to see even more titles. And I can click any of these book jackets to learn a little bit more about these books. Underneath publishing this week, we have books that are publishing soon. So these are books that haven't been released yet. You can see what publication date they have listed right in the description there. And you can click on the arrow again to see more of these. So this is a really good way of, if you feel like you were a bit behind on your reading and you want to get ahead, this is good to see, all right, what's going to be coming out soon, so that way you know to come to the library, place it on hold, and get ready for that book to be released. So you will be ahead of the curve if you frequently check this area of BookBrowse. We also have books that have recently been released in hardcover, books that have recently been released in paperback, and we also have books that have articles that were recently written about them. We'll take a look at those Beyond the Book articles again a little bit later. Scrolling down a little further, we also have the top recommendations for book clubs. Now, BookBrowse is famous for their book club recommendations. A lot of the resources on BookBrowse are geared towards book clubs as well as book discussions. And BookBrowse actually has an entire area on their website dedicated to book clubs and running book clubs. So let's take a look at those resources next. So first we're going to use the back arrow. And then on the home page, right underneath what's new, is that book club area that I was mentioning. So let's click on book clubs. And here is the book club central. So there are a ton of different resources that are available on this page. So let's go through everything one by one and talk a little bit more about it. So first we have the top 10 book club recommendations. Now, BookBrowse does change these recommendations from time to time, but if you are starting a book club and you really have no idea where to start or what book you want to pick, this top 10 list is a good idea to periodically take a look at because you can get some very good book recommendations from here. So these are books that have a lot of book club resources on BookBrowse and books that have been used a lot in book discussions before. So chances are if you pick one of these books, you are probably going to have a very successful discussion. So you could see we have for each book, we could see the book cover as well as when it was released, and we also get a star rating. So I could click on any of these book jackets to get book club resources that are specific to that title. But we're going to scroll down a little bit more. And let's look at the BookBrowse book club. Now, if you don't belong to a book club or you're having a hard time getting a book club started, first off, you could always join the Longwood Library book clubs. We have the daytime book discussion and the nighttime book discussion. So keep an eye on our events calendar for the dates and titles of those. But BookBrowse also has their own book club. So it's the BookBrowse book club. That's a mouthful to say. Every month, BookBrowse picks a book to feature. So right now they're doing The Last Flight by Julie Clark, and you can see the description of the book here. If you want to learn more about the book and see if this book is something you would be interested in reading and discussing, you can click About This Book. Otherwise, you can click Join the Discussion, and you can see different discussion topics that people have opened up related to this book. So if you're comfortable doing an online discussion or you want to see how an online discussion is structured, checking out the BookBrowse book club is a good idea. Sometimes they have more than one discussion going, like right now they have the Beekeeper of Aleppo as well as The Last Flight. And then they'll also let you know what's coming soon, which I think is a nice feature, because if you are not able to dedicate yourself to a book club right now, at least you have the option to see what's coming up next and get a feel for whether or not you might be interested in participating in that discussion. Now, if you don't want to pick one of the top 10 book club recommendations or any of the BookBrowse book club selections, you can also look for your own book club selections right here on this side panel. So they have a bunch of different categories that you could pick from. So let's take a closer look at one of them. I'm going to say let's pick genre for right now. All right, so here is the book club reading list by genres. So let's say I have a book club that is primarily focused on mysteries. So I can come under genres here and I can click mysteries. To get mystery-specific book club recommendations. So I can click on any of these book jackets to learn a little bit more about the book. But for right now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back one more time. We're going to look at some of these other categories that they have too. So that was looking at book club recommendations by genre. But you could also look at some kind of unusual categories, which I like that BookBrowse does this. So we have settings, first off. So you can look at books set in different countries. You could look at books that are set in USA regions. So for example, if you wanted a book that was set in the Northeast, they have a whole Northeast category. They also have them individually categorized by states, which I think is a nice feature too. So if you wanted to pick a book club recommendation about New York State, they have a New York State category here. We also have some other cool categories. First off, we have time period. So if you wanted to look at a book that was, say, set in the 1920s or the 17th century, they actually break it down by time period for you. And then we also have theme. And this is nice if you have a topical book discussion. So for example, say you've decided that the theme for this book club's month is going to be animals. They actually have an entire list of book club recommendations about animals. So you can look through any of these to get some pretty cool recommendations based on different topics. There's also one more feature that I really like in Book Club Central, which is the book club interview. Now, anybody who has been a part of a book club will be able to tell you that it can be tricky. It's tough to get everybody gathered in one place. It's tough to have people be able to commit to meeting once a month or once a week or however often you run it. And it can be difficult to solve any sort of interpersonal issues that pop up during the discussion. And it's nice to be able to know what people who have run a successful book club have done. So Book Club Central actually does interviews with book clubs, and I love this. I think it's so cute. So you could go to Book Club Interview down here, and you can look at past interviews, or you can read the current interview. And they'll interview a book club, and they'll ask them questions like how they got started and how they keep it going all this time. And I think that's nice. Again, if you're struggling to get a book club together, or if you're just starting a book club, this is a good way to get an idea of how different people structure their book clubs and how they keep it going for such a long time. So I definitely recommend taking a look through these. They're fun articles. And if you ever want to apply to see if your book club can get featured in here, BookBrowse does have a contact page on their website. So definitely reach out to them and see if you could get interviewed. So that is the book club recommendations. We're going to go back to the homepage. And BookBrowse does have a lot of their resources geared around book clubs, but there are other resources they offer too. So another big thing that they offer are Readalikes. So if you had watched the Novelist video, Novelist also does Readalikes. I think it's a very good idea to look at Novelist Readalikes and look at BookBrowse's Readalikes, because sometimes they will recommend completely different titles for a book. So you can really get a lot of different choices to take a look at. But we're going to take a look at the Readalikes that BookBrowse offers. So if you don't know what a Readalike is, it is a list of recommendations based on a particular title. So as you can see here, we have a couple books that are featured. I'm going to use Eleanor and Park here as an example. So we have Eleanor and Park. That was a YA book, really good, totally recommend it. But if you liked Eleanor and Park, these are books that BookBrowse recommends as possible suggestions to read next. So if you enjoyed that book, these are other books that they think you might enjoy. Now you can use this page to navigate Readalikes. I do think that there is an easier way to do it though, so we are going to talk about that a little bit later. Right now we'll go back to the home page. And then we also have the Find a Book area. So we're going to talk about searching in just a little bit. That's if you want to search for an individual title or author, but you can also browse by different categories. So these categories are very similar to the categories that we looked at when we were discussing book club. They have genres, settings, time periods, themes, and cross-reference. Instead of being just book club picks, though, these are all of the books that BookBrowse has in their database. So let's take a look at the genre category, for instance, and then you can see a list of different genres. The ones that are in bold have more books than the ones that are not in bold. So for example, biography and memoir, they have a lot of recommendations there. History, current affairs, science, thrillers, mysteries, whereas something like, say, speculative fiction has less. Now, one of the things about BookBrowse that I do want to mention is that BookBrowse is geared towards literary fiction. And by literary fiction, I mean the genre of literary fiction. So a lot of the books that they tend to recommend and review tend to be either literary fiction or genre books that have some sort of crossover with literary fiction. And in part, this is because of their focus on book clubs. Literary fiction titles tend to make really good book club recommendations because there's a lot to discuss there, a lot of things that the author has purposefully done. But just know, if you are looking for more genre fiction recommendations, I think Novelist might be a better resource for that. But if literary fiction tends to be your taste, then BookBrowse will have a lot of recommendations that you'll enjoy. Going back to the homepage again, we also have this young adults area. So BookBrowse does cover young adult fiction. It is not as large as their adult fiction section, but they do have some young adult recommendations, and they do a lot of crossover books. So these are books that are YA books that might also have crossover appeal for adults. So you can definitely take a look through this page to get an idea of what's popular in YA and what will be coming out soon. And then scrolling down a little more, we have the BookBrowse review. Now, BookBrowse puts out an online magazine. You can click here to read the current issue, or where it says magazine archive, you can hit next to browse the past issues. So for every magazine, they have a lot of information, and this is a really good way to keep on top of the publishing industry. That way you can get an idea of what's coming out. You can read some reviews of some books that BookBrowse has chosen to highlight. You can look at author interviews. You can see some book club recommendations. You can see news in the publishing industry. I think that that's a useful area to have. So you can really get an idea of what is going on in books right now. So if you're kind of struggling to keep up with everything, because the publishing industry is extremely large and there is a lot happening, the BookBrowse magazine is a good thing to check out. All right, let's talk about searching for individual titles and authors now. So I think one of the best ways to use BookBrowse is to look up a book that you are either interested in or have read recently and you want more books like it, and find it in the BookBrowse database, because BookBrowse has a ton of information available for individual titles. So let's go ahead and do a title search together. I'm going to come to the search bar here. So we get the choice of searching for title, author, or article. So we're going to uncheck author for right now, and we're just going to search for a title. So I'm going to use Where the Crawdads Sing. All right, and scrolling down this page a little bit, we have it here as the first result. So let's click on that. And then we have a ton of information that's already here, so let's break it down a little bit. First off, we have the title and the author. I can at any point click on the author's name to learn more about the author, but we're going to take a closer look at author pages in just a moment. So right now I'm just going to ignore that, and we're going to take a look at the cover. And then we have 2-star ratings. We have the critic's opinion as well as the reader's opinion. And this I like a lot. It reminds me a lot of Rotten Tomatoes. You know, where Rotten Tomatoes gives you the critical opinion for a movie and the viewer's opinion for a movie, like the audience reviews. And this is kind of similar. So you can see what the critics thought of a book and what the readers thought of a book, because sometimes those two opinions don't always match up exactly. So you can get an idea of what different people thought of it. We have when it was published. We also have how many pages it is. And then we could also see some additional information on the side here. Like, for example, this book is from a debut author. So if you wanted to read a new author, debut authors are marked in BookBrowse. Scrolling down the page more, If you decided you are ready to take this book out, you can click search for this book in Longwood Public Library and it'll search for it in our catalog where you can place it on hold. Or if you're in the library, you can go to the shelf and take it out. Scrolling down a little more, we have the About This Book area. So this is where you can get a lot of information about the title. So some of the things you can see here are the summary of the book. So we can get an idea of what this book is about and whether or not you might want to either read it or pick it for a book club. And then I think this is a nice little touch too. We also have an excerpt from the book. So that way, before you even look for it in the library catalog, before you do too much research on it, you can get an idea of if you like the book by reading a short excerpt from it. So this is an excerpt from chapter 1. It gives us a couple paragraphs, and then I can read a little bit more if I hit read full excerpt. We also have, and this is the thing that I really like the most about BookBrowse, is the reading guide. So if you had decided that you were going to pick this book for a book club, then you actually get what's called a reading guide, which gives you book discussion questions to use during the discussion. So right now, looking at the reading guide for Where the Crawdads Sing, please be aware this discussion guide may contain spoilers. So, if you are going to read through those questions, you are probably going to get spoiled in the plot of the book. But we could see a couple questions here, and then I can read more to get additional questions. I am going to click read more here, just so you can see what that page looks like. So here are all the book discussion questions, and if I want to, I can either copy and paste these into Microsoft Word or some other word processor that you might use, or I could actually hit the print button to go ahead and print out that list directly from BookBrowse. So it's pretty useful to be able to have this list already made. You might not choose to use all of these questions, but at least you have a pretty good choice of what you might want to talk about during your discussion. We're going to scroll down the page a little bit more. We can click on Book Awards to see if this book has won any awards. We can also look at reviews. So there's 3 different categories of reviews that we could look at. We can look at BookBrowse's review, media reviews, and reader reviews. So let's look at BookBrowse's. So BookBrowse's review, they gave it 4 stars. And then here's the review, and here's the reviewer. And I like that they add the reviewer's name because sometimes you find a critic that you have similar tastes to and you want to see other articles that they've written. So you can always click on their name to see any other books that they have reviews for BookBrowse. We also have media reviews. So I can click that to see different reviews from different resources. Some of the resources will be resources that might be familiar to you, like for example, New York Times, New York Journal of Books. Some of them might be trade publications from librarians. So Publishers Weekly, Kirkus Reviews, Booklist, these are the journals that librarians use to choose books for their collections. And then we also have sometimes like random ones, like Reese Witherspoon gave this book 5 stars. And I think that's pretty cool that they included her as well. So you do get a bunch of different sources that will be averaged out into the number up here. We also have reader reviews. So these are from the BookBrowse community. Again, BookBrowse does have a fairly active community, so you will get people who do read and leave their opinions on there. I think that feature is very similar to Goodreads, which we're going to be talking about in an upcoming class. But I think it's nice to get an idea of what other readers think of a book as well. And then scrolling down a little more, we have a Beyond the Book article. So these are articles that BookBrowse writes that are nonfiction articles that tie in to fiction or other nonfiction titles. So the idea of these is that they provide some sort of real-world context for the story. Now, in this case of Where the Crawdads Sing, the subject of the article is nature writers who also write fiction. Delia Owens was a nature writer. She co-authored 3 books with her former husband. And a lot of the experiences that she wrote about are things that informed the plot of Where the Crawdads Sing. And so they have a nice article here recommending some other authors who might have a similar style or similar background. And the topics of the Beyond the Book articles can change depending on what the book is. You know, if you have an article set in a specific time period or around a certain historical event, Beyond the Book articles can tie into those things. So, nice selection to have for book clubs. If I wanted to share this with my book club, I can go ahead and hit continue there. And I can print out this article to bring with me. So if you have a situation where the book club discussion might be dipping a little bit, sometimes you get those little lulls that happen, and that's fine. Being able to pass out an article like this can help you restart the discussion. So it is nice that BookBrowse not only gives you the questions, but also gives you some additional reading material. Also very useful, I think, for teachers who might be teaching on this particular book. And then scrolling down more, we have the Readalikes. And this is kind of the way that I prefer to look at the Readalikes, because if I am looking up a title that I'm interested in, I'm probably going to want to see some Readalikes for that title. So if we click on Readalikes here, we can see some books that are recommended. They recommend 2 to start with, and then you can click See All Readalikes to learn more. So for each Readalike, they give you the title, they give you when the book was published, and then they give you a little description of what it's about. Now, as I said earlier, you can also look at authors. So we're going to take off title, we're going to leave author, and we're going to type in the name of an author. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and type in, how about Neil Gaiman? All right. So we got quite a few books by Neil Gaiman that are available here. We're going to click on his name to learn more about him. So for author pages, you also get some additional information on there. First off, you get a picture of the author. I also love this area where you get the pronunciation of the author's name, because some authors, it can be very difficult to pronounce their name, especially if you're going to be having a book discussion. You want to be pronouncing the author's name correctly. So they give you the pronunciation right there. So that is a nice touch. Scrolling down, I also have the author's biography. I think this is a useful feature too. Again, if you have a book club discussion going and the discussion has a little bit of a lull, maybe handing out this biography article and discussing it a little bit will help revive the discussion, because a lot of authors, their life experience informs their writing. So knowing a bit about the author and who they are as a person can help you get some insight into the book. Scrolling down a little more, we also have an interview. Now, the interviews are not usually done by BookBrowse. There are some that they have done, but usually it will be an interview that they have gotten the rights to republish. So right now, you can see we have an interview with Neil Gaiman when he was talking about his book American Gods when that came out. And I can hit read full interview to read that interview there. Again, learning a little bit more about the author can help inform you about the book and maybe how the book was written and what the author was thinking of when they wrote it. So reading the interview, I think, is a good idea. I could see books that this author has written. If I want to see more than what's listed here, I can click more books. And then I also get author Readalikes too. So if I really like this author and I really like what he writes, I can look at other recommendations that might be similar. Now, BookBrowse does have one other area that I would like to show you, and that is the fun area up at the top here. A lot of people don't know this, but BookBrowse actually does book giveaways as well. So there's 2 different giveaways that they run. They have the wordplay and they have the standard book giveaway. So let's click on the wordplay first. If they have a puzzle that they'll have listed on the page, and the puzzle is usually some sort of well-known phrase. So you have to look at the letters that they give you here and figure out what the phrase is. And then you can guess by coming down to the entry form, putting in your first name, your email address, what you think the answer to the question is, and then you can also leave any additional comments and then hit submit. And if you win, they'll contact you and you can potentially win a book. They have a list of different books that you can choose from right here. Now the other giveaway is a little more standard. That's under Fun Book Giveaway. So for this one, they will feature a different book every month. So they'll give you the cover, title, author, as well as a description of the book and some reviews. And then you can scroll down here to enter the giveaway. Now the nice thing with this is if you are just reading the book, you can win up to 4 copies. But if you are part of a book club, you can actually, where it says please select here, you can choose what book club you're in, like what number of members you have. And then you will get 12 copies of the book to read with your book club. Now, again, of course, that's if you win. If you win, you get the 12 copies. But it's nice to just be able to enter and see if you win. Again, if you're running a book club or you're thinking of starting, that might be a good way to get things off the ground. You know, you win the book and then you can potentially pass it around to people. But definitely put in for those giveaways. They are updated pretty frequently, so I recommend checking back and seeing what book they are featuring to give away. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you joining me here today. Keep an eye out on August 13th. We are going to be running a live class on Goodreads, so I will put the link for that in the description. But in the meantime, I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.